In the United States, the age of criminal responsibility varies by state, generally set at 18 years. However, in many states, youth as young as 14 can be tried as adults for serious crimes. Recent legal changes. In 2022, California passed laws limiting solitary confinement for juveniles, capping the maximum duration at 4 hours. In New York, the Close to Home program was expanded, allowing youth to serve sentences in smaller facilities closer to their families. Additionally, there is a growing movement to eliminate private prisons holding minors. Notable cases. In 2020, the death of Khalif Browder, a 16-year-old who spent 3 years detained at Rikers Island without trial, sparked widespread protests. Browder reported being held in solitary confinement for long periods and suffering physical abuse from both fellow inmates and guards. In 2023, a lawsuit against the state of Florida exposed degrading conditions in several juvenile centers, including the prolonged use of solitary confinement and denial of adequate medical care. Overcrowding and inhumane treatment. Many juvenile detention centers in the U.S. face chronic overcrowding, resulting in unsanitary conditions and frequent incidents of violence. Reports from organizations like Human Rights Watch highlight cases of physical abuse and medical neglect, especially in southern states. A shocking educational initiative. One program aims to impact youth by immersing them in a simulated prison experience to deter them from crime. The approach is harsh and unfiltered. Youth are treated as real inmates with no leniency or politeness. Wearing uniforms and with their hands and feet shackled, they are placed in cramped, filthy cells where they witness the grim reality of prison life, including detainees lying on the floor in unhygienic conditions. The peak of the experience takes place in the juvenile wing, where inmates of the same age as the students are confined 23 hours a day, with no access to sunlight or a sense of time. Even bathroom use is strictly regulated, and rule violations can lead to severe punishment. To heighten the impact, a special prison intervention team simulates emergency situations, demonstrating how critical scenarios are handled with intimidating tactics. Juvenile incarceration in the United States. The situation in the U.S. is even more alarming. With over 2.3 million people incarcerated, including children as young as 10, the U.S. has the world's largest prison system. Most minors are not detained for violent crimes, but for minor offenses such as drug use. Key statistics. Juvenile prison population. At any given time, approximately 50,000 children are detained in the U.S. Of these, about 2,200 are held for status offenses, which are non-criminal acts deemed illegal only because of the individual's age, such as truancy or running away from home. Prosecution of minors as adults. All 50 states allow minors to be tried in adult criminal courts. Annually, around 32,000 youth under 18 are admitted to adult prisons, exposing them to greater risks of abuse and high recidivism rates. Cost of incarceration. The U.S. spends approximately $52 billion annually on incarceration, including state prisons, federal prisons, and juvenile detention centers. This highlights the significant economic burden of maintaining such a large incarcerated population. Juvenile justice system in Iran. From its strict laws to controversial practices, let's uncover the realities that affect thousands of young lives. In Iran, the age of criminal responsibility is shockingly low, rooted in interpretations of Islamic law. For girls, it's 9 years old. For boys, it's 15 years old. This means children as young as 9 can be tried and sentenced as adults, which raises serious concerns about fairness and human rights. Iran's detention facilities for juveniles are riddled with challenges, and here are 2 examples. Tehran Juvenile Correction and Rehabilitation Center. Allegations of torture. Lack of basic resources, including adequate food and hygiene. Shiraz Juvenile Facility. or reports of overcrowding. O. Limited access to education and vocational training. Did you know that 80% of juvenile detainees in Iran are held for nonviolent offenses? These are kids who could have been better served by rehabilitation programs, but instead, they're stuck in a system that struggles to meet their needs, or reports of overcrowding. Limited access to education and vocational training. Iran is one of the few countries in the world that still applies the death penalty for crimes committed by minors. Between 2010 and 2021, 85 juvenile offenders were executed in Iran, according to Amnesty International. This represents nearly 70% of all juvenile executions globally during that period. These numbers highlight the urgent need for reform, as international organizations continue to pressure Iran to abolish the death penalty for minors. In 2020, Iran announced reforms aimed at improving the conditions in juvenile detention centers. However, progress has been slow. Many of the promised changes, such as better access to education and healthcare, remain unfulfilled. Let's talk about a case that sparked global outrage: Dilara Darabi. In 2009, she was executed for a crime she allegedly committed at 17 years old. Her case became a symbol of the flaws in Iran's judicial system, particularly regarding minors. Her story is just one of many that reveal the struggles faced by children in Iran's justice system. Every year, over 10,000 juveniles are detained in Iran, according to local reports. With proper investment in rehabilitation programs, many of these young people could lead productive lives instead of becoming trapped in cycles of poverty and crime.